Hi, everyone, and welcome to our last session of our Waiting for DattoCon series this week. Really appreciate everyone who's joined us this week, and especially today being our last session. I do want to apologize in case people got a few too many notifications right before the webinar started. We had an issue sending out notifications. But I also want to just mention during the webinar, we do have a Q&A open. So you can see there's a tiny blue chat icon in the lower right. If you open that, you can ask questions. And we'll be addressing all of the questions at the end of this webinar. We have our product manager, Mikey Pruitt, on the line. So he's going to take all your questions. So feel free to type away as we go through this. This webinar is being recorded, so you will get a link afterwards as well. So without further ado, let's get started. My name is Serena Raymond. I'm the content producer at DNSFilter. And today's topic, obviously, is Cisco Umbrella versus DNSFilter. So we're going to be talking about the differences. And before we get into the head-to-head, I want to spend some time on why DNS protection is so important. So security threats are on the rise, and unfortunately for all of us, that leads to data breaches. There are more ways than ever before for black hat hackers to gain access to your sensitive information or take down your website, and there are a few reasons for this. One reason is there are more employees working from home than ever before. I mean, this series that we're doing right now is evidence of that. No DattoCon because of COVID-19, so I'm sure a lot of us are working from home offices. You know, some of you might even be at the kitchen table. No judgment, I've been there. But unfortunately, working from home means we're not protected by the company network anymore. We also rely more and more on web applications in our day-to-day working lives. So that results in a lot of shared passwords as well as potential for those sites, the sites that house your precious information, to fall victim to hackers. And hacking is big business. Your personal records are worth a lot of money on the dark web. Think credit card info, social security numbers, passport numbers. There's a lot that the wrong person can do with that information. And that brings us to how they're doing it. Phishing websites and ransomware attacks. Those are the biggest offenders. There are 18 million new phishing websites every single year. And a quick question for everybody who's joined us. Have you ever gotten a phishing email? All right. I'm seeing a few responses. Not surprised, a lot of yeses, because obviously they're very prevalent. You know, you're not alone. I've gotten one. I've had friends who have gotten them. Barbara Corcoran, real estate mogul from Shark Tank, she has gotten one. And both my friend and Barbara Corcoran have paid up in a big way because they got those phishing emails and they fell for them. Barbara Corcoran was out over 400 grand, and my friend, who doesn't have a lot of money to spare, not a real estate mogul, she was out a few thousand. And ransomware attacks, that's the other one. Between 2018 and 2019, they've increased fourfold. And what is ransomware? Well, this is another deception that hackers pull off quite successfully, unfortunately for the rest of us. This is when you stumble onto a website that seems normal until a pop-up appears claiming you've downloaded malware. Usually the only way to get rid of this malware, according to the totally deviant hacker you should definitely not believe, is to call a number or send an email or even enter your credit card right then and there. And the cost for this can be small. Might be $20, but if you think of a single hacker deploying this attack on thousands of websites and 100 people fall for it, it adds up. So cybercrime costs companies big money. In 2019 alone, cybercrime resulted in $3.5 billion in losses. That's billion with a B. And just dealing with computer viruses annually costs $55 billion. And this includes things like cleaning up computers, replacing them all together, paying the IT professionals who clean them up, adding new virus protection programs. I mean, think of your own company as an MSP. How much time, do you spend on viruses in a single year? So small and medium enterprises are at a high risk because a large breach could shut them down. And according to Accenture, the average cost of a malware attack is $2.5 million. And when you take into account everything that goes into dealing with the aftermath of an attack like this, from business disruption, which can be loss of sales, loss of brand loyalty, redirecting efforts to deal with the malware attack, as well as GDPR fines, lessened productivity, process failures. There are so many other things I could name, but there's really no wonder that the bill adds up to so much. A lot of companies that experience a data breach because of malware are forced to re-architect their IT security, hire outside agencies to figure out how the malware got on their computers in the first place, and deal with press. So threats are everywhere, and they can cost your clients a lot of money. And a lot of these threats are at the DNS level. This means malicious site content, ads, emails. Basically, clicking on a link that you're not sure you trust is a tremendous hazard in 2020. We'd like to say simply don't do it, but the reality is that hackers are really good at this deception. And this is where DNS protection comes in and stops you and your employees from accessing content that you shouldn't. So DNS security helps protect you against malicious content on the web, but what are some of the other benefits? First, there's visibility. Being able to look at your network traffic can help you understand your business, figure out where users are spending time, uncover shadow IT applications in your clients' businesses. Second, zero-day threats. You're going to hear me say 0-day a lot during this presentation, so apologies up front, but that's because catching a 0-day attack is really important. So a 0-day attack is when a threat has basically never been seen before. This kind of stems off of what we talked about on the previous slide, but if you're able to stop brand new threats as they appear, it prevents you from becoming the victim of a brand new attack. And lastly, control access to unwanted content. This enables you to block pornography, violent and disturbing content, even streaming content. Basically, if you determine through the visibility that you now have with DNS protection that there are certain sites your employees are spending a lot of time on that they should not be, you can block those sites. Before we move on to the next section, I want to send out another poll because I'm curious, how important is the quality of threat detection to your business? And for that matter, for your clients? Okay, not surprising, very important. I was actually going to be really bummed if people said not very important, so I'm very happy with those answers. So in this next section, I'm going to tell you a story of one Fortune 500 company's journey to finding the right DNS protection solution for them. So once upon a time, just kidding, it was 2019. Not that long ago, but it does kind of seem long ago now with all the events of 2020. It feels like a lifetime ago. But there was a Fortune 500 company that had been using Cisco Umbrella for a while, and they began to question how good Cisco Umbrella really was at blocking threats. Their main concern was actually blocking malware, ransomware attacks, all of the things we just talked about that could cause serious data breaches. So what they were really questioning here was if the brand name, Cisco Umbrella, that everyone was familiar with was really the best option. Are they worth the investment? As an example, I'll throw this out there. Like Sony is the most expensive TV on the market, but I have an LG. I bought it last year. It's way less expensive than the Sony equivalent, and it actually has some capabilities that the Sony TVs can't do. You know, it's one of the best OLED TVs on the market. But I get all of the benefits of that TV without having to pay the Sony price tag. And you can trust me on that example because my partner works for a Sony subsidiary, so apologies to Sony, but it's the truth. So bringing it back to DNS protection, it's the same for Cisco Umbrella. They're the name that we know, but are they the best? These were the types of thoughts that the Fortune 500 company was having. So they did their homework and figured out who they should be talking to, and that included DNSFilter. So they came to us, and we worked with them to put together an experiment that would not only determine how good DNSFilter is at blocking threats, but it would actually pit DNSFilter software against Cisco Umbrellas for a true head-to-head comparison of the platforms. But before we could get started, we needed a benchmark to do this experiment fairly. So VirusTotal is a collaboration of over 150 antivirus and domain scanning tools. We used this aggregate tool as a benchmark for our results. So to measure the efficacy of DNS protection software, the domains blocked by that software, whether it was Cisco Umbrella or DNSFilter, should match closely with the domains marked as a threat by VirusTotal. So basically, whoever matched more closely to VirusTotal won the contest. So we ran the experiment in 2 phases. Phase number 1, we took a list of domains that DNSFilter blocked in a 24-hour period and accessed those domains with Cisco Umbrella to see the results. Phase 2 was an inverse of phase 1, where we took a list of domains that Cisco Umbrella blocked in a 24-hour period and then accessed those domains with DNSFilter. So this diagram illustrates phase 1 of the experiment and the possible results. Either the 2 systems would match, they would both block the threats. The second system could error out and display no answer. And finally, the system could not block a threat that the first tool discovered. So now we'll go into the details of phase 1 and phase 2. So phase 1, DNSFilter marked threat domains run through Cisco Umbrella. What did we see? Well, first, according to VirusTotal, we found 12 false positives in our block domains after checking VirusTotal. That's a little under 3% of our total block list. But that meant we had an over 97% match rate with VirusTotal on the domains that we blocked. Of the domains we blocked, minus the false positives because they don't count, Cisco only blocked 27%. It allowed users to access 54% of the threats that DNSFilter blocked, and 20% received no answer. So that means that Cisco Umbrella only agreed with VirusTotal 27% of the time in this phase of the experiment. So just to make that clear, that means over 75% of the time, Cisco Umbrella was not actively blocking threats that VirusTotal acknowledged as threats. So let's move on to phase 2. I know there's a lot to look at on this slide, so I'm going to walk you through it piece by piece. Reminder of what phase 2 is, we took a list of threats that Cisco Umbrella found in a 24-hour period and then visited those threats using DNSFilter. So on the surface, DNSFilter allowed a lot of blocked sites. You can see on the left, we only agreed with Cisco Umbrella 5% of the time in this phase of the experiment. And that had us really scratching our heads because we know our software and we know that we block threats. But when we looked at VirusTotal in this phase of the experiment to check the validity of these blocked domains that Cisco Umbrella blocked, we found that Cisco was throwing a lot of false positives, meaning they were marking sites malicious when they were not malicious. And because we compared Cisco to DNSFilter and then compared them both to VirusTotal, that's what we got in the pie chart on the right. So you can see that DNSFilter and VirusTotal in this phase of the experiment agreed 85% of the time. And when you include Cisco Umbrella overlap, we actually agreed with VirusTotal 90% of the time, while Cisco Umbrella agreed with VirusTotal only 15% of the time. And this actually matches up really well with the graph on the left that shows the disagreement between Cisco Umbrella and DNSFilter's threat detection. It also shows that 5% of the time, DNSFilter and Cisco Umbrella agreed. So we do have some common ground. What we took away from this experiment is that Cisco Umbrella generates a large amount of false positives in a day and marks safe sites, sites that you might need to access in order to do your job, as malicious. And this can negatively impact productivity, which kind of defeats the purpose of a DNS filtering solution. We want to help people be productive by only allowing them to access the sites that they need to in order to do their work, and then block the sites that might cause a major IT issue and disrupt a day or a week of work. So high amounts of false positives can really impact your company's day-to-day in a negative way. Something else we need to talk about that this graph doesn't exactly show is that of the 0-day attacks DNSFilter blocked, Cisco Umbrella was only able to block about 50% of those. As we mentioned before, a zero-day attack is a brand new vulnerability that no one knows about yet. Zero-day attacks put a lot of people at risk because they're unknown. So it's really valuable for DNS protection software to be able to pinpoint those vulnerabilities and block websites in real time, even if the system has never seen those threats before. So all of those sites that they were not able to block, it was mostly because they were brand new sites. In fact, in another comparison that we did that looked at DNSFilter's blocking and categorization capabilities compared to third-party feeds, we often block threats 24 hours before others. So that might be the case here. When you have to wait 24 hours before a threat is categorized, it means if you go back and access that site within that same 24-hour period where it hasn't been flagged as malicious yet, you remain vulnerable to that phishing, ransomware, or malware attack. Whereas DNSFilter's AI can catch these threats early. So you don't need to wait 24 hours to be protected. Once it's been detected, it's been categorized, and it's been blocked. And to really illustrate how important zero-day attack blocking is, I want to share a few numbers with you. There are over 200,000 new domains registered every day, and 20% of all new domains are malicious. So being unable to categorize zero-day threats in a way that immediately prevents you, your coworkers, your clients, employees from accessing those threats as soon as they're known puts you at a considerable risk. Based on this experiment, that Fortune 500 company became a DNSFilter customer. There is a lot of trust in VirusTotal because it is such a large aggregate, and our experiment really showed that DNSFilter not only matches up better to VirusTotal, but it doesn't keep employees from accessing the applications that they need throughout their day. So is Cisco Umbrella the best at blocking threats? No, it's not, but I don't think you expected us to say otherwise. So now that we've discussed that Fortune 500 company's journey, let's compare DNSFilter and Cisco Umbrella features. Before we start this section, I have another poll for you because I'm always curious about this, what people think of AI. Is it the future, a buzzword? Do you not care? I'm always really curious about that. So the poll is live if you want to answer. Okay. These "it's the future" answers are really warming my heart. I love that. Because I totally agree. I think AI is the future. I think some people think of it as a buzzword because a lot of companies use it to a point where we become totally numb to it, because they're not specific about what they use it for. So I'm going to speak to that a little bit here in how we use our AI and machine learning. So it's not just science fiction anymore, AI, machine learning, it's used everywhere. And Cisco Umbrella and DNSFilter both use machine learning. But DNSFilter is the only DNS threat protection solution that is driven by AI-based categorization. So we provide real-time threat detection, meaning we actually scan websites in real time to determine if they're good or bad, even if our AI has never encountered them before. And then based on the numbers I gave a few slides ago, that's a lot of the time. And we also do imagery-based anti-phishing that actually matches images on a page to known phishing sites. And as discussed, we prevent against zero-day attacks. So I know you're probably tired of me saying zero-day attacks, but Cisco Umbrella does not protect well against zero-day attacks. And from our experiment, they have a high number of false positives. They use some machine learning, but it's not clear within their documentation where that machine learning is used. So we know that Cisco Umbrella uses some feeds from their internal software to mark sites malicious, which may mean they're relying on list uploads more heavily than their machine learning features. And we know that they're using some machine learning. But as with a lot of companies right now, like I mentioned, it's not really clear where in their product or how it's being used. So something that we're doing on the machine learning side is really training our AI to categorize websites. For instance, coronavirus is a great example. There are a lot of new scams out there asking for donations. So we provided our AI with a large list of threats that it could learn off of, so it could start detecting these threats as they appear. And conversely, It's also learning what a real educational website about coronavirus looks like. So if you're looking for websites that show symptoms, experiences, tips on protecting yourself, maybe a list for local barbershops that are now open because you really need a haircut, our AI will be able to block the sites looking to scam you while leaving those educational resources that are legitimate open for you to browse. And this is an important point on negating the number of false positives that happen that result in sites that shouldn't be blocked getting blocked. So we train our AI on how to categorize both the threat and the harmless sites so that the end user can work online totally protected, knowing that what they need to access will remain available for them to access. Okay. Speed is everything, right? Well, DNSFilter is fast. In fact, we're one of the fastest DNS resolvers in North America. We beat out Cisco Umbrella and we've beaten out Cloudflare. Neither DNSFilter nor Cisco Umbrella have either had a global outage. We know that we've never had a global outage in part because we rely on two host providers, meaning if one node goes down, the other is less likely to because they're on a different network. However, we can't confirm that the same is true for Cisco Umbrella, but we know they at least have one network. One thing that we can confirm is that at DNSFilter, we have more worldwide data centers. We have 48, while Cisco Umbrella has 31, according to their documentation. And more data centers means more coverage, better speed, no outages. You can see this is a screenshot from G2. We take a lot of pride in the reviews we get on sites like G2 and Capterra. And if you compare us directly to Cisco Umbrella, you'll see that we outrank them in a lot of categories. We're ranked higher for ease of use, setup, admin, support, as well as the pleasure of doing business with us. We're really easy to talk to. We're real people. And just looking into this more closely, setup for Cisco Umbrella, according to G2 reviews, usually requires an engineer, while our setup is quick and easy. Cisco Umbrella does not have a full capacity white label option. If you're an MSP, they will only allow a co-brand of their system, meaning your logo is always going to be next to Cisco Umbrella, subtext overshadowed by. But at DNSFilter, we have a full white label option available for MSPs. And we do have two quotes here. Note that these are actually both positive reviews. So it's a positive review of Cisco Umbrella, but they acknowledge that their support is not great. While a lot of our positive reviews will always call out our support team because they're really responsive and we care a lot about our customers. Onto our pricing model. So both of us have a 2-week free trial that you can register for, but while we put our pricing out there for everyone to see, Cisco Umbrella keeps it a little closer to the vest. They also require an upfront year-long commitment. So while you're most likely going to be paying that month to month, you'll still need to commit to a full year. At DNSFilter, we only require a month-to-month subscription. So comparatively, our pricing is just a little more flexible than Cisco Umbrella. You're not locked into long-term contracts. So with us, you only pay for the users you need, whereas Cisco Umbrella has what I like to refer to as roundup pricing, meaning you can only buy licenses in blocks of 20. So if you only need 15 licenses right now, you actually need to round up and buy 20 if you go with Cisco Umbrella. So we don't like asking people to pay for licenses that they don't need, which is why we don't group our user licenses that way and we don't offer roundup pricing. And now a fair comparison. Let's level with you for a second. We're not perfect. There's a lot of things that we're still building into this product. The last time I gave this presentation, we didn't have Active Directory integration, but we just recently released our Active Directory and Azure Active Directory integration. You might have seen the demo yesterday that John did on it. But prior to that, Cisco Umbrella had beat us there. So we do have that. It's new. We plan on adding more directory services, but you can log in and test it right now, see how it goes for you. And if you have any feedback, please share it with us. We're always looking for feedback to improve. So we have added that. And then one thing that we still do not have is AMP support. And then this is our roadmap, and talking about things that we don't have, I wanted to share kind of what's in progress, what's planned. This is not, a full picture. There are other things that we are working on, but I think these are some highlights. I think some of these are really important features, and like I said, we invite our users to add more feedback all the time. So, as we finalize things that are in progress, we can add more to our roadmap. Yep. So I do want to ask, now that you're looking at this, I have one last poll for you because I'm curious, of the features that we have listed on here, which ones are most important for you? We're always working on features that are just for MSPs, so I'm really curious if any of these kind of stand out to you as things that you really want and are looking for. All right, query log, email alerts for blocked requests, automated threat alerts, enhanced reporting. All right, those automated threat alerts. Ugh. Those automated threat alerts are getting a lot of love. So I really appreciate your feedback there. Definitely we'll take that into consideration. So now I'm going to take this time to pass it over to Mikey Pruitt, who is our product manager at DNSFilter, and he's going to go over some questions. And if you still have questions and you haven't typed them in yet, please, type away.
Yeah, hello everyone. I'm Mikey Pruitt. I'm the product manager here at DNSFilter. My job is essentially taking feedback from all of you and our other stakeholders and getting those into our product. And I don't see any questions in the Q&A thus far, so get those in as soon as you can so we can get some answers for you. I will say that Serena just mentioned our alerting got a lot of votes in that last poll. We actually do have a project on the roadmap coming up probably by the end of this month. We'll be starting on a feature to alert you on various events that happen within your account. So that'll be threat alerts. When someone goes to a ransomware site, you can have the option to get an alert via email, SMS, or a push notification, or a webhook at the frequency of your choosing. So we definitely have taken alerting into account, and we'll be starting on a project like that very soon.
So Mikey, I have a question, because I think with the topic of Cisco Umbrella versus DNSFilter, some people might be curious specifically about our roaming clients capability and how that compares to Cisco Umbrella. So I don't know if you could walk us through that a little bit.
So one of the key differences in our roaming clients versus Cisco Umbrellas is there's nothing to do once you install our roaming client. There's a lot more setup involved with with Cisco Umbrella's product. Our roaming client, you install it, you put in a secret key for the roaming client during installation, and that's it. You're ready to go. We also have an Android and a Linux roaming client that Cisco Umbrella do not. See, I see a couple of questions from Guy. Let's see. Can you deal with file downloads? How do you identify a risky file located in AWS, for example? We don't do, I guess, what you would call deep scanning or URL scanning, and we do not scan for files, but I will definitely take note of that and discuss it with our team to see if that's something we can handle. See another question from Matt about Active Directory. Is there documentation on best practices to handle multiple domain controller setups? So we actually can accommodate a hybrid setup, excuse me, with Azure and on-premise Active Directory. The same sync tool that is used for Active Directory is also used for Azure. If you are in a hybrid environment, we would recommend having the sync tool located on the on-premises one of the domain connected machines and using that to sync to our dashboard. And it will work with multiple domain controllers. but all you need to do is set the sync tool up on one machine that is domain connected. Another question about Active Directory. No, so the user count is based on what you have given us. So if we don't charge for users that are not active. We charge based on the users that you have told us that you have, and we have some checks in place that will measure the traffic against averages, so we can determine if those counts are accurate that you've provided for us. So it looks like we've got. So Mike says, are admins notified when suspicious network activity is detected? So that's actually coming up in our alerting project, and that will be one of the alerts. Suspicious activity, you want to know what's happening on your network, and that's what we want to provide to you. And then Michael has another question about Active Directory. So regarding reporting, there is a in our Data Explorer, in the reporting, the Active Directory, the new features, the users and the collections are now in our Data Explorer. You can slice and dice those reports in many multiple ways. So just go into the dashboard, go to Data Explorer after you're sending some traffic via Active Directory, and check out those reports. I think you'll find them useful. Let's see. Mike has another Active Directory question. More loosely managed networks. What can we look for to see if users are trying to bypass filter rules? So there is a document in our online documentation regarding bypassing, trying to prevent customers from bypassing the filter, and it can be challenging, especially with usage of VPNs and other things like that. But we do have mechanisms to prevent that. So check out our documentation, and we'll try to get you a link to that, Mike. Let's see. Guy has another question. If a customer has a proxy, does your product also recommend to be I'm not sure about that question, Guy. But we can work with, I'm not sure if you're talking about deployments or if you're talking about filtering specifically. Maybe you could clarify a little bit in a follow-up question. But we can filter out proxy websites, which, as you know, there's a lot of proxying going on the internet. So that is a feature that we do have. However, it can be problematic. Like if you were to say, block one of Cloudflare's various domains, something might break on your deployment. So just be careful with that and test it before you deploy it to your customers. Let's see. Kier has another question. Any plans to integrate SIM tools to automate alerts? Yes. So we do have plans to specifically integrate with a couple of SIM tools. And we were first looking at Splunk, which we understand is the most popular one. We were thinking about a direct integration with Splunk, and I think we have two others listed. I don't remember them off the top of my head. But in addition to integrating directly with a few SIM tools, we have an idea to export our raw data to an S3 bucket of your choosing, an S3 compatible bucket. So it could be anything, Amazon's S3 service, or it could be Linode has a S3 compatible bucket storage. DigitalOcean does, and I think there's another one called Wasabi that seemed really interesting. So our idea was to actually give you the raw data that you can then import into your SIM tool. So a lot of the SIM tools will automatically dump the data in your S3 compatible bucket, and then the SIM tool can retrieve it from there, and that way you can get more insight into what's happening on your network. One of our big pushes for the rest of the year is to connect the user with the query. And we understand that's what you guys are really wanting, and that's what we're trying to provide. So Michael has a question about RMM and PSA tools. We are in the process of partnering with a few companies like that. I can't say their names, but we are working on tighter integrations with common RMM and PSA tools for sure. There's just some really good questions. I was surprised a lot of the AD questions came through. But yeah, that's really good. Active Directory is a new feature. I suggest you go check it out on the website under collections and users. We also have some pretty thorough documentation on it in our docs, and we'll provide you guys with those links as well. All right, well, those were some great questions. Serena, I'll pass it back to you.
Thanks, Mikey. Yeah, those were some really great questions. So I think it was Mike who had the question about bypassing filters. I dropped a link in there in case that'll help you out. And obviously, like, we have lots of stuff in our documentation around Active Directory. Also, for all of you who are interested in Active Directory, tomorrow at 1 o'clock Eastern Time, we do have an Active Directory session. We're doing another demo of it if you want to join us then. But that is everything on our agenda for the day. Again, I really appreciate everybody who has joined us. Thanks for attending. If you have any more questions that come up, don't hesitate to email us at sales@dnsfilter.com. Obviously, with support, you can always contact us there. We're always looking to help you out, answer your questions. But thank you, everybody, and take care.